Good morning everybody and welcome back to another War Thunder video, and finally I'm actually doing a proper upload for the first time in probably about 3 weeks at this point. Aside from yesterday's video, but that was just to catch you all up, see what I'd been doing, see how my life had been getting on. Today however I'm going to discuss one of the tanks that has been revealed recently whilst I was in my having my period of absence. Helicopters are another thing that we will get into at a later date. However, today I'm going to be discussing the T-80. Now, for those of you who are unaware, the T-80 was actually designed and accepted into service in 1976. The production of the tank lasted until 1992 after the fall of the USSR, with a grand total of 5,405 main battle tanks being built. They were quite a leap forward compared to the T-64 and even more than the T-72, and were among the first generation of main battle tanks to enter service worldwide. At the same time, Germany and the US were still struggling to close their over-ambitious MBT-70 design, which, as all of us War Thunder players will know, were probably not a fantastic tank anyway. And 2 years after both countries launched their own MBTs, the M1 Abrams and the Leopard 2. Therefore, for 2 years, the Soviet Union had hundreds of advanced MBT worldwide, and the disposal for any Western offensive light years from the M60. At that time, the most widespread NATO main battle tank. Of course, this is during the 1970s. However, some analysis still saw it for years as a simple improvement of the T-72, whereas it was closely related to the T-64. As a fact, the T-64, T-72 and T-80 all look superficially similar, and were armed with the same main gun, which as we know is 125mm. The real difference came with the performances and the fact that the T-64 and T-80 were small and shorter than the T-72. These were also manned by reputedly much better crews, as they were classed, in the Soviet Union at least, as elite tanks. We also know that the T-64, for one thing, was never exported. There were T-64s stationed in East Germany, as I've mentioned before, so technically the East Germans did have T-64s, but they were crewed by Soviet tankers, so they weren't actually part of the East German army, so to speak. Now, what makes the T-80 really special, as for us in War Thunder especially, is the fact that it has a gas turbine engine. For those of you who don't know what a gas turbine engine is, and without going into too much detail, I'll just say that basically it's a helicopter engine in a tank, or a jet engine in a tank, if you want to look at it like that. They're stupidly complicated, but produce an awful lot of power, and usually quite high maintenance as well. Now, the whole reason that the Soviets put a gas turbine engine in their T-80 is because they wanted it to be fast, which it certainly was. I've seen some footage of it in the test server, as I'm sure most of you have as well. War Thunder has been plastering things like that all over their Facebook page recently, and I think I could recall it doing about 65 kilometers an hour on like a field sort of terrain. It will probably go faster than that, maybe 70 on concrete, and especially going downhill. But 60-65 is actually pretty fast for a Soviet main battle tank. Now, it's worth me pointing out that the Soviets had a completely different doctrine from the Western world during the Cold War, as far as the tanks were concerned. They used them as brute force, attacking maybe not always with infantry, but, well, not infantry on their own at least. A combination of main battle tanks and armoured fighting vehicles, or APCs, or IFVs, whichever you wish to use. BMP-1s, BMP-2s, things like that, BTRs maybe, to a lesser extent, and they would push the line as fast as they possibly could, overwhelm the enemy, and basically just surround them and knock them out that way. Whereas in the Western world it was more generally accepted that you were to hold your ground, assuming of course that the Soviets were attacking you, not the other way around, and just fight until you're told to retreat, more or less. Now, the armour of the T-80 was supposedly similar to the T-64B, To the T-64. Whether it was or not, I am actually not that sure. I would assume that it's better, although considering the version of the T-80 that we're going to be getting in War Thunder does not have ERA, although it will probably be added as a modification to make it the T-80 BV, but we'll see. It may actually be equal to or even slightly less than the T-64 BV, but I'm actually perfectly fine with that. It gives the Soviet tankers at high tier another method of gameplay. I try to use my T-64B in an aggressive manner if and where I can. I push when I think I can. I hold a line when I think I can, because with that 4 kilometers an hour reverse speed, I ain't going nowhere backwards. So it's a case of you push as far as you think you can, and if you push too far and you get outflanked, you're dead. So the T-80 is going to provide a lot more mobility to the Soviet tanker at high tier, regardless of armor, which I'm actually kind of looking forward to. Think of it as a Leopard with less armor, if you want to look at it like that, or a Leopard with more armor, if we're thinking about the Leopard 1. And you may actually get an idea of how it should play in game. Anyway, let's go on to mobility. Now, the T-80's gas turbine engine developed 1000 horsepower instead of the 750 horsepower diesel engine, although the later T-80 revert to diesel for reasons we will see soon. I'm not going to cover that personally, but basically, if I was to sum it up, the gas turbine engine drank just as much fuel when it was just ticking over as it did at full throttle. So the logistics of the engine were actually rather bad, if you think of it like that. A diesel engine does not use anywhere near as much fuel when the tank is sitting idle with the engine running as it does at full throttle, whereas the gas turbine engines do. So there were many other reasons besides. As I said, the engines were not that reliable anyway, but I think that was one of the prime factors for them going back to diesel. But I digress. The gearbox had 5 forward and 1 reverse gear, and not 7 forward, 1 reverse. Instead of the hydropneumatic suspensions of the T-64, well-proven torsion bars were used, and the tracks laid on 6 forged steel-aluminium rubber-clad road wheels. There were also rear sprockets and front idlers. The tracks were also slightly wider and longer than the T-64, which gave lower ground pressure, which means the tank was able to move faster over soft and rugged terrain. The turret houses the same 125mm 2A46 smoothbore shared by the T-72. It can fire both standard ordnance of various types, from HE Frag to Heat and AP-FSDS, but also anti-tank guided missiles as well, which we will be used to with the T-64B by now. The feeding system is the Korzena automatic loader, which holds up to 28 rounds, 2-part ammunition in the carousel, located under the turret floor. Again, exactly the same as the T-64's. Extra rounds are also stored inside the turret. This proven autoloader is effective and reliable, also combat tested since the mid-1960s. The propellant charge is contained in a semi-combustible cartridge case. Only the small metal baseplate is ejected after being consumed. The loading process takes between 7.1 and 19.5 seconds depending on the initial position of the carousel. Thankfully, the carousel's position is not modelled in War Thunder at the moment. Please God, don't make that be a thing, because that would be really bad. So let's go into the known issues and then we'll wrap up. Apart from the usual uncomfortable and crampy interior that would be unacceptable for NATO crews, the T-80 BV, although, you know, the hull and that remain the same, so used in combat in Chechnya, was proven quite vulnerable and proven to catastrophic explosions. The reason given by US and Russian experts was the vulnerability of the stored semi-combustible propellant charges and missiles when hit by molten metal jet from the penetrating heat rounds. Western tanks indeed had their rounds stored in a separate stowage from the crew compartment using the armoured blast doors or blowout panels. The latest T-84 Oplot, the Ukrainian-derived version of the T-80, has an entirely new turret with armoured ammunition compartment to help prevent accidental detonation. Help prevent, not prevent, by the way. Well, let's just do that. The first evolution of the basic type came quickly and was characterised by a new turret integrating a new laser rangefinder, fire control and even a new autoloader modified to operate the 9M112-1 Cobra ATGMs. This one was credited for an accurate 80% hit on the move. On the protection side, improved composite armour was used. In 1980, this version received a 1,100 horsepower engine. In 1982, it was provided with a new gun. In 1985, it received fittings for an improved reactive armour. This had an equivalent protection of 400mm against heat warheads. Sighting range for the ammunitions range from 4,000 meters for kinetic energy ammunitions, cumulative ammunition 5,000 meters for HE frag, and near 10,000 when using the side level system. The night sight TP-NZ-49 range in active mode was 1,300 and 850 meters in passive mode. Accuracy for the reflex ATGM system is enhanced by a laser beam, allows for accurate targeting on the move at any speed. That's the T-80, which I believe is the model we're getting in game. So anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. I'm really looking forward to the T-80 coming to the game. It's still not my T-72, but I'm looking forward to it nonetheless. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next War Thunder video. Please like, share and subscribe if you haven't already. It's comments and likes and subscriptions from you guys that really help me continue to push building my channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.